I did say that week one is not a complete representation of how the NFL season was going to go. It would be asinine to make an assumption to carry yourself throughout the entire season outside of obviously who do you think is going to win this, who do you think is going to win that. But I had some harsh words. I'm not going to call them harsh, but I had some not so flattering words to say about the Detroit Lions after they lost to the Green Bay Packers week one. One of the main talking points was not just how they looked in week one, but how they looked in the preseason and obviously losing their two coordinators, which was the precipice of why I thought the Lions were not going to have a good year. I just thought that it was going to – I didn't think that they would have a bad year. I just didn't think that they would have a year that a team, especially offensively, that loaded should have. Going into the season, if you have a team like the Lions, I would expect Super Bowl or bust. But because you lose your two coordinators and you didn't really look good in the preseason and you didn't look good week one, I kind of threw them away. I'm like, you know what? This ain't the year. Then they absolutely boat race the Chicago Bears. Now, you can also chalk that up to, Ben Johnson was their offensive coordinator. They want to stick it to him, this, that, and third. But then the Lions go into Baltimore and essentially manhandle the Ravens. And they come out of Baltimore with a 38-30 win. And all the things that I said in week one, the point where I said, it doesn't look like they're going to compete for a championship. I know before week one, I was saying that they're probably still going to win the division. And then the way that they looked week one compared to the way the Packers looked week one, I kind of flipped it. I may have been a little too quick. I was wrong about essentially throwing away the Lions after week one. While no, they did not look good in week one, they did not look good in the playoff or in the preseason. They have looked incredible. It almost looks like, you know what it is? That creativity isn't there anymore. The creativity that you saw from Ben Johnson's offense is not there anymore. And even against the Lions, against the Bears and against the Ravens, you didn't really see that creativity. But what you did see was efficiency and physicality that neither the Bears nor Ravens could match. The Lions did nothing special against the Ravens. They just ran, smashed. Jared Goff only threw 28 times and only had 202 yards. But they ran the ball down the Ravens' throat. Nothing special. Obviously, when they had to go for fourth downs and make fourth down plays, they did that. But we're talking about a team that, was used to creative ways of scoring. Now, in these last two games, we're seeing we don't need to get creative. We just need to execute, and that's what they've been doing. And that's something that we didn't see week one. That's something that we didn't see in the preseason, which is why I had the thoughts that I had about it. But the Lions that we saw these last 2 weeks not only are most definitely a NFC North winning contender, but they're a Super Bowl contender. When you have Jared Goff playing as good as he's been playing, when you have Amon-Ra St. Brown playing as good as he's playing, when you have the running back duo, which is the best running back duo in football by far, and David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, it's hard to stop. Then you have Sam Laporta. Then their weakness, I thought, was going to be their defense, and their defense stepped up mightily these last two games, especially against the Ravens. Sacking Lamar Jackson 7 times, you don't see that, especially against Lamar Jackson. I'm going to talk about the Ravens in a second, but I do not want to move over to Baltimore without properly giving the praise that the Detroit Lions deserve today. The Detroit Lions, it's starting to look like week 1 was more of an aberration than anything else. Now, yes, I know that obviously we'll talk about Chicago a little bit later, but obviously we're talking about a different level compared to Chicago right now and Green Bay, but this Lions team I'm starting to feel like how I felt these last 2 years. When they get rolling, when they get their offense is clicking on all cylinders, they're almost unstoppable. And the thing about it, and it looks different, and that's the biggest credit that I can give this team. It doesn't look as flashy and as creative, and that's absolutely no offense to the team. You know, Ben Johnson has that flashiness and creativeness. This is just smash mouth football. Yeah, there are some creative plays, but it's not as abundant as we saw with Ben Johnson. But what we are seeing is a team that just puts their head down and do what they have to do. Really embodies a Dan Campbell team. And when they're firing on all cylinders, which is crazy, they were not firing on all cylinders against the Ravens. They were just running the ball like crazy. They converted 2 95-plus yard play or touchdown drives. Like, this Lions team is good, and I was wrong in saying that we should cool off on the Lions because since week 1, they've done nothing but heat up. And that brings me to the Baltimore Ravens. Yes, I know, the team that I picked to win the Super Bowl yet again this year. Monday Night Football, I saw the Ravens team that I've never seen before. I saw the Ravens team that I don't think we, football watchers, anyone, I don't think we've ever seen a Ravens team like we saw Monday Night Football. And that is a team that got manhandled, that got pushed around, that got bullied in their own house. That looked lost a lot of times. And that essentially looked like a team that did not deserve to be on the field with a visiting team. You see, the worst part about it is when you look at the score and you see 38-30, it looks like it was a close game. And I know they had a garbage time touchdown. I know Mark Andrews caught it, I believe. But the game was much worse. If you watched the game, it felt much worse than it really was. The Ravens got punked. And that's something that I don't think we've ever seen from this organization. Now, I want to kind of elaborate on that. Gone are the days where we should just pencil in the Ravens defense being elite, being stout. Those days are long gone. The Ravens culture has always been smash mouth defense and smash mouth running the ball. I don't know if you guys have been paying attention, but for the last 2 years now, the Ravens defense has been spotty at best. And I think there were some bad times last year. They kind of picked it up towards the end of the season, but I don't think I've ever seen a performance as bad on the defense as I saw Monday Night Football. You gave up a 96-yard run, or 96-yard touchdown drive, and then backed it up with giving up a 98-yard touchdown drive. They gave up 224 rushing yards. I understand that Matabike was out. I understand that Kyle Van Noy is out, but you're gonna have to live with this fact that Matabike might not be back for a while. He's dealing with a neck injury, and I don't think Kyle Van Noy is going to be back for a while because he's dealing with a hamstring injury. So what you got is what you got, and I've heard it these last 2 days now, and I agree to a certain extent. When you have the names that they have, especially on the defensive side of the ball, Roquan Smith, Kyle Hamilton, Marlon Humphreys, Malik Starks, or Malachi Starks, Nate Wiggins. Those names shouldn't, or they jump off the paper when you hear them, especially when you see the resume that's attached to their names. The two teams, actually, if we're being quite honest, they haven't looked good all year. They were obviously they played a inferior team in the Browns, but the Browns are even working them at times. We're getting big yards from the run, getting big yards from the tight end. This is yet another game where the Ravens lost the trenches, both offensively and defensively. I know a lot of it, let me not say that. A lot of it was the offensive line, but some of those 7 sacks were also on Lamar Jackson. And that's one reason why I'm not going to, kill Lamar Jackson and blame Lamar Jackson is because you have to take the good with the bad with every quarterback. Lamar Jackson is probably the most unique quarterback in all of football. One of the reasons why I say he's the best quarterback is because he does things that nobody else can do. And that's what you have to accept from Lamar Jackson. Not the problem, but on the other hand, in order to do some of the things that he does and is successful at, there are also times when he does things that it's like, bro, maybe you should have threw the ball away. Maybe you held the ball too long. That's just not in Lamar Jackson's DNA at this point. And we praise it when you have incredible plays. You can't kill it when he may get sacked once or twice. Because that's just, you don't want to take that away from his game because that's one of his superpowers. But the offensive line got demolished. And the defensive line was non-existent. This was the first time, it looked like, I know that they got to 30, but it looked like nobody was on the same page. They couldn't get, outside of Rashad Bateman, they really couldn't get the wide receivers open. Lamar Jackson looked the most frustrated I've ever seen him look. He's over here yelling at the sidelines. You look at it just looked like every single time. It looked like almost every drive they didn't score, Lamar Jackson was pissed. And rightfully so. Well, I mean, you get to what the Lions 3-yard line and you don't score. I will say Lamar Jackson was lucky that Branch dropped a clear fire interception, and Derrick Henry almost threw an interception. But the Ravens, Nick Wright said it best. The reason why I think my panic meter is high for the Ravens is because the things that they need to work on the most can't be worked on by their best player. I'll give you an example. Next week, or this on Sunday, the Ravens are playing the Chiefs. I think this is a must win game for the Ravens, especially after this loss. And they have one of the toughest schedules in the league. You're playing against a Chiefs team that also is struggling. But their issues is offensively. Now, yes, there's nothing that you can do about the offensive line of your Patrick Mahomes, but Patrick Mahomes' greatness can kind of steer the offense in the right direction, which is their biggest issue. The Ravens' biggest issue at this moment is the defense. There's nothing Lamar Jackson can do about that. He scored 40 points and 41 points and 30 points. 40, 81. That man scored 111 points. The Ravens have scored 111 points, if my math is right. And they're 1-2. So it ain't the offense. And that's something that Lamar Jackson can't fix. Can't fix gap responsibility. Can't fix the fact that Roquan Smith has not looked like himself outside of 1 or 2 plays. You can't fix the fact that Marlon Humphrey got killed on 2 major plays trying to guard Amon-Ra St. Brown. And then the next day, the first thing you see of him is on a podcast. You can't help Metabike's neck. That could be major. Or Kyle Van Noy's hamstring. The panic meter is high on the Baltimore Ravens, in my opinion. Now, I'm not saying high in a sense of even if they lose against the Chiefs, I don't think that they aren't going to make the playoffs. When I look at the AFC North, I think that they'll still win that. I mean, if they do lose on Sunday, you're losing to a team that was just in the Super Bowl. You're losing to a Patrick Mahomes. So I'm not saying that the panic meter should be high on the season, not making the playoffs, but this will be the third, if they do lose to the Chiefs, this will be the third team that you have lost to this year that you very well could see in the playoffs. You could see it looks like the Bills have a clear-cut path to the number 1 seed. They just have one of the easiest schedules in the league. And then you'd very well, if you do essentially make it to the Super Bowl, you could see the Lions again. And then you're going against the Chiefs, which you could see in the playoffs as well. So if you don't win that, it's very hard for my preseason prediction of y'all being a Super Bowl team. It's very hard to continue to think that. Right now, that thought is kind of teetering. But if you lose to the Chiefs, And then this is also the first time in Lamar Jackson's tenured as a quarterback for the Baltimore Ravens, starting quarterback for the Baltimore Ravens, that the team went back-to-back games and did not rush for 100 or more yards. Which brings me to Derrick Henry. I'm not going to sit here and call Derrick Henry washed. I'm not going to do that. But these fumbles are starting to become an issue. I'm most definitely not saying that Derrick Henry was the reason why they lost against the Lions. But just like the fumble against the Bills, it was a momentum killer. Because I think 2 or 3 plays later, after that fumble, the Lions score. It went from a 1-point game to a 2-touchdown lead. Not 1-point game. 1-possession game to a 2-touchdown lead for the Lions. That was a momentum killer. The Ravens, the biggest takeaway from that is this is the second team that you could very well see in the playoffs. And you lost. And this is the first time that I've ever seen the Ravens get bullied. Not just in a game, but get bullied at home. It's okay to lose a game, but to get ran through, especially with the names that you have, is concerning. Again, I don't think that the season's over. But this was yet another opportunity to beat one of the premier teams in the league, and you've squandered it again. So, congratulations to the Lions for beating the Baltimore Ravens 38-30.
Oh, man, you stayed to the end of the video. I appreciate you. If you like what you saw, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you'll never miss any content from your boy. You can also go back and watch past episodes, past clips, and don't forget that the Unpopular Podcast, new episodes drop every Wednesday and Saturday. Appreciate you.